Hi, everyone. It's Miranda Dreyer on the Cosmic Mama Show, and we are in the middle of our Portal to Sovereignty series. And we are talking about all of these different technologies. They're really sacred technologies, and I truly do believe that that we can rapidly reconfigure reality and materialize new Earth. And today is a very special treat because I have someone who's been very pivotal on my path, and that is Richard Rudd and his work with Gene Keys. And he's the author of Gene Keys. I actually have my copy right here. I highly, highly, highly recommend that everyone has a copy of this book. I really do. And well, we're gonna be going into it, and I think that you're gonna want to grab it if you don't have it after listening to this talk. So I want to tell you a little bit about Richard Rudd, and I don't normally read the bios, but I really wanted to read Richard's because it is poetic just reading it. But Richard Rudd is an international spiritual teacher, writer, and award-winning poet. His mystical journey began early in life when he experienced a life-changing state of spiritual illumination over 3 days and nights in his 20s. This catalyzed an extensive worldwide spiritual search. All his studies became synthesized in 2002 when he began to write and receive the Gene Keys. A vast synthesis exploring the miraculous possibilities inherent in human DNA. It took 7 years to write the book, as well as understand and embody its teachings. Today, Richard continues to teach and travel all over the world, applying the Gene Keys across many fields, from the practical to the mystical. Attracting a wide audience, his works have been translated into many languages. And in 2019, Richard was named on the Watkins list of the 100 most spiritually influential living people. So that really doesn't surprise me. And, it amazes me that, this was only in 2002, and I was reading like a little bit about your story in that 7 years. And I'm like, I feel like this definitely was like a receiving. I mean, you were contemplating things like hexagrams for 7 years of the I Ching. And, I think not everybody knows. A lot of people are going to know what the Gene Keys are, and some people won't. So can you explain what are the Gene Keys? How are they associated with our DNA? And what different layers, because there's so many layers of like the I Ching's in there as well. So can you just explain how this all works for people who maybe don't know?
I'll do my best.
Perfect.
It's I guess I should start by saying it's a synthesis, and this big book, it's a big book. It's got a lot of, it's a code book, really. It's a code book of consciousness, and that's really what the I Ching is. Actually, the original I Ching, discovered 5,000 years ago by some Chinaman staring at the back of a tortoise, and he was looking at the interlacing symbols on the back of the tortoise. And I don't know whether he'd taken some plant medicine, but he went into this understanding of the entire cosmos through the back of this tortoise. And he started to see the holographic makeup of the universe. Anyway, that's my interpretation, because then he started to write down some simple symbols that represented it. And that eventually grew to become this wisdom that came out of China called the I Ching. And then at a certain point, when Watson and Crick discovered DNA, that was in the 60s, and we realized that it also had a code very similar to the I Ching code, because it has, identical actually, 64 codes divided up into triplets and sixes, and so this basically, something that very modern science discovered was also discovered thousands of years ago. And this is not a new story, because we see we see that a lot. We see a lot of modern science reflecting ancient wisdom, and like the flower of life and these ancient symbols and things that we can now interpret in all kinds of ways, patterns underlying the universe. So that's what the gene keys are. It represents a universal life code. And it's interesting as well, Miranda, that our technology that's allowing us to talk right now is also based on a 64-bit information system. So, and of course, it's the foundation of the musical octave, you know, the 8 octaves, and it's also there in the phi ratio, which you see in geometry, natural geometry in nature, and is embedded in many natural systems. You know, so what we're looking at is a code that's broken down into 64, that then is broken down again into other variations, and it seems to be, because our genetic code is made of the same fabric, it's made of the same matrix, it seems to be a very universal phenomenon. So what I did is I didn't study the Chinese I Ching, actually. I mean, I studied a little bit, and I had a Chinese teacher for a while, a really wonderful man, a master called Master Ni. And but I kind of put all that aside, and I went into a very deep contemplation of these 64, symbols, and over this time, and out of that grew this book, The Gene Keys, and it kind of came to me as a, I guess, intuitive, imaginative, downloading process, that also, it wasn't just a thinking process, it was a process that kind of came to me out of life itself, out of my living life. Each time I was contemplating one, I might be contemplating the 6th gene key, for example, which is, because they're 64, so they all have numbers. And the 6th gene key is, in the original, is called conflict. It was about conflict. And so I would go deep into that symbol, and then out of it came 3 words, 3 layers, 3 levels, which I now call a shadow, a shadow state of consciousness, and then a gift, which is hidden in the shadow. So there's a gift or a genius quality, and then there's a siddhi. I call it a siddhi because there's not really a word in English to represent an enlightened state of that shadow or that gift. So a kind of an enlightened realization, right? And so there are 64 of those states embedded in every human being. And so we have all of them in the same way as that we have, every cell of our body has all the codes of DNA.
Sure.
Which is, so it's all holographically encoded in us, the whole of life. And so I went into this deep contemplation of those states. And so I would, in the instance of that gene key number 6, it would be conflict, was the basis of the shadow. And then inside that shadow, the word that came from me for that was diplomacy. So the purpose of conflict is to lead us toward diplomacy, is to lead us. So conflict actually teaches us how to listen, how to be with people, how to understand yourself and them and your emotions better, and be empathic. And then the final level, the siddhi, is called peace. So very simple. From conflict, the deepest purpose, the highest purpose of conflict is peace. And you can apply that across the whole spectrum of the gene keys. And what you end up with is a kind of code book of human consciousness. And the basis of it is that every difficult, challenging, negative, or you might even say evil state or energy, it has a higher purpose. And that higher purpose is to release its gift, to unlock a gift. And out of that gift, out of that flowering of that gift, will fall eventually the fruit of the siddhi. The siddhi is the highest state possible. So the whole basis of gene keys is that it starts with the difficulties and the suffering that we all feel because we're in the world. And that's kind of like where it all begins. So it's a courageous system in that sense, because it's a tool that points you into these difficult states that we all experience anyway,
Mhm.
And that, but it kind of encourages you to look at them and feel them and understand them,
Yeah.
and even draw closer to them in your life or distracting yourself away from them, so
Mhm.
that we can mine. We become like these miners that, you know, and we mine that coal for those diamonds, and out of the coal, out of the coal face of our inner process and our outer life, you know, we can use our living everyday life to kind of find these amazing gifts. And the Gene Keys is a kind of map
Yes, that's exactly how I
along the way.
describe it.
Yeah,
It's a multi-dimensional map.
yeah,
It is.
yeah. It can be used
Yeah.
in many ways.
Oh, yeah. And, that's absolutely my experience. And, to be honest, I first, I don't even remember what rabbit hole I was down when I discovered the Gene Keys, but I'm sure it was a rabbit hole. And, and I, because I think I did find you, I think I first did find human design. It was very like same time for me. And, and we don't need to go into that. That's a whole other thing. But because I really appreciate the work of Gene Keys just by it. Like, I know that they can be layered together, but I've really come into really working with the Gene Keys alone. Like that's become my path. Like I really, to me, it's a multi-dimensional map. And this other chart is kind of like, it feels more like a construct to me that, and I felt like I could flow with the Gene Keys in my life, and I could keep coming back to them and revisit them. And so instead of explaining, like why I'm this way, it was more of like a map of awakening. And to me, that was really, that really, has taken me on a path. And that was probably in 2000, like 2010 or something. And I had a reading from someone, and that introduced me to the Gene Keys. And then I went really deep in, and there was these journal entries, and then I didn't revisit them for a while. And then and that's kind of how it's worked for me. Then they would come back into my life, and I would go revisit, and I would be reading, and I would do my profile again, and I would be reading, and I was like, this last time it really blew me away. And so I do want to guide people that you can get a free profile. You can really, you can see mine. Richard has, you can get a free profile on gkeys.com. But what I really want to talk about today is, and we are going to be talking about some of the keys that are in my profile, but only because they've become really close to me, and so they're easier for me to talk about. And I also really see, because you're saying, all 64, we all carry all 64, but I think that I read that we can get like imprinted with certain ones like during our birth that really kind of show up more in our own lives. But as going through them, I see how they're really connected to humanity and as a whole. And I can see how my own life is connected to humanity and what humanity is going through right now. And so I'm really excited to ask some questions. I want to dive in to, really, I think I want to start with the 22nd Gene Key and ask you some questions about that. And the 22nd Gene Key, one of the things I wrote down is the subject of the 22nd Gene Key is the true meaning of suffering. And I right now I feel like humanity's at this real like pinnacle of this point, this choice point of which way we choose to go. And this show title just became Portal to Sovereignty. It was in a conversation with a friend, and it just kind of became, it was just going to be the Cosmic Mama show with the tagline, and then all of a sudden this Portal to Sovereignty came up in a conversation. And I realized that I feel like we're really at this point where we get to choose our sovereignty. And I want to ask you, how are the Gene Keys and working through the Gene Keys related to finding our sovereignty as a race? And also, what do you mean by the true meaning of suffering, and how is our suffering a reflection of how is that a gift?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's nice to actually use the gene keys in that way and just to use tools to explore universal themes. So yeah, the 22nd gene key, it's a special one because it's one of the kind of much longer ones, and there's only two like that, the 55 and the 22, and they're kind of brother and sister. And the 22 is sort of, and I like that, by the way, because it's a symmetry, 2-2 and 5-5, they're kind of upside down mirrors of each other. And there's a lot of those mirrors in the gene keys and little patterns. And the 22 is really about grace. Its city is grace, and the shadow is dishonor, and the gift is graciousness. So you really have to begin with dishonor, and you go, well, when because every code is layered into the whole of humanity and has been in humanity since the beginning. So this is a story, and myths have grown out of the story, and legends and films and books, and every gene key kind of has it's an encyclopedia, it's a portal into a whole mythos. So when you open them up, I could do like, I don't know, a week-long retreat just on one gene key and where it leads, and the art that's connected to it, and the music that's come out of it, and because you can feel it. So, and this one is pivotal, because, as you said, because it's about suffering and the meaning of suffering, and obviously that's the deep question that we all have lodged inside us, being in bodies, and it's even more in focus today because we're much more coming in tune with it, and we're much more coming in tune with how we are dishonoring ourselves, each other, and the earth, itself. And this is the great feminine gene key, the 22. It's grace. Grace is a feminine spirit, and so is graciousness. And so it's the lesson that we're here to learn. By dishonoring, we learn the art of graciousness. We learn how, when you dishonor someone and you really realize it, it's such a lesson. Or if you dishonor yourself, I'm sure everyone who knows this, everyone who's listening to this knows this. It's a time when you think of a time when you've dishonored yourself or someone else. You've betrayed yourself, or you've betrayed someone else, in a way where, and what a sharp lesson that is, and how much it hurts. But then how much there's something grows of like, I really want to do better next time. And maybe you do it twice or 3 times, because we make multiple mistakes, humans, and that's part of the suffering, is that we kind of tend to learn like that. We do it again sometimes, and then we learn, and then we soften, and then we transform. And that's where we start to learn the art of graciousness. And graciousness is how you treat others in a way that you would like to be treated yourself. And that's how you treat the environment, or the animals, or the insects, or the birds, or the plants around us, all of it, everything. Begin to learn how to treat everything with graciousness. And graciousness is beautiful. So, and this is a really great one for relationships, for all relationships, that if you can learn the art of graciousness, then you will always have good relationships, because out of the energy of graciousness, which contains a lot of other, like graciousness, you might say it contains kindness, respect, courtesy, some compassion. It's a word that has a whole universe hidden inside it. Care, support, all those other things that are inside. How do you treat something graciously? And out of that comes grace, because when you treat things with graciousness, then the response from the universe is grace. And grace basically is sort of the miraculous. It's when something beyond our capacity to understand touches down on the earth, and a sort of miraculous event occurs, whether it's inside us privately, or whether it's actually a living, miracle. Like, in a way, you could also look at all the 64 words for the cities, and they're all one field, but they're different lenses. So like forgiveness is the fourth city, for example, and forgiveness is grace. It leads to grace. And you could take peace, which I mentioned earlier. Peace is also a part of grace. So they're all interconnected. So the purpose of suffering is to teach us, through suffering, how to love ourselves and therefore how to love others. And that really is it. It's as simple as that. Now, it isn't simple. It isn't easy. We know that because we all grapple with it every day, particularly in our relationships, where it tends to come up, in the sharpest way, whether that's with our family members. There's always someone, right, in our lives. There's always someone that tests us, that pushes us, that provokes us, that knows that, they have the code that pushes you to the limits.
Yes.
That's where the grace is, in that person. It's not the person, it's the energy that's using the person to kind of trigger the potential in you to respond with grace, with graciousness, So when someone comes at you with dishonor, are you able to respond with graciousness? And what does that look like?
It's been a practice.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're all sweet and nice, but it means that you're not caught in the victim cycle. So they throw it at you, you throw it back with equal anger.
Yep.
They throw it at you, you catch it, you hold it, you consider it, you look at them, you go, that wasn't very kind. You let them know sometimes, or sometimes you forgive them instantly. It's whatever graciousness is appropriate, and it's a living wisdom in that way. And Gene Keys is a living wisdom. It's not something, the book just kind of triggers the process inside you.
That's absolutely my experience, Richard. Like, I am sure that there are people who know more about all the mechanisms of it than I do. But one of the ways that I really started working with it really was just I took the words, I took the shadow and the gift and the CD, and I sat down with a dictionary, like a big, the big old-fashioned dictionaries, and maybe I think I have one that I got at a thrift store for, like, that back when I felt like there was a richer description of the language. And I just journaled, I just wrote down, the shadow, and I wrote down, the gift, and just the words in itself. And, that really leads me to, there's so many things. I feel like you could talk for a week about the 22nd Gene Key. And because you have things in there, they're talking about the 6 core wounds of humanity, and there's these seals, and that would be like a week-long retreat, or maybe even a month. But I want to move in. Let's go into the 30. I'm going to go into the 35th CD, because this one, the 35th, it's actually my my life's work. And so people will, these are the placements are different for different people, and everybody has their own chart, but for me that's my life's work. And you had a quote that you said once, and you said your life's work is transforming the shadow of your life's work. And I was like, like I was, it meant so much, because the shadow of the 35th Gene Key is hunger. And as I really started to, back years ago, I might have just went hunger, like yeah, well, I struggled with emotional eating, or I've that's probably the deepest I might have gone with it. It's like, what does it mean, hunger? And then as I revisited it, and I look back, and with these new layers, and I honestly started to wonder, is hunger the sacred wound of humanity? And and I started to see all of these different ways that I hungered. Like the times when I was young, and I hungered for love, and I hungered for this soulmate to save me, or I hungered for success, or I hungered for, you know, just, that was my way of being. Like that, my way of being was, like there really was a void that I wanted to fill, and there was nothing that could fill it. There was nothing that could fill it. And, you know, to me, that word has really come to mean scarcity. Like it's so closely related to scarcity for me. And, you know, I would love to just hear you express, and I definitely want to go into the gift, which is adventure, but, you know, would you say that this is a core wound of humanity is hunger? And can you, you know, just tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. I mean, I'd say, again, just to repeat, that all the keys are in us. So you see, so every shadow is a core wound. You know, dishonor is, like we mentioned earlier, is also a core wound of humanity. But you see them all. You just, you go in one lens, and it opens up a whole, as I said, a whole storyline. So yeah, hunger is exactly as you said. I have that one also in my profile. Yeah, it's the things you said. It's the part of us that, you know, because when we're here in these bodies, we don't remember fully what we are. That's what we hunger for, right? That's the truth. We hunger to know what we are. That's the core hunger, you know, and it's an ache in us, in every single human being. It's an ache. And it can take so many forms as it kind of leaves us, that hunger. It can become, you know, it can be, you know, it become hunger for distraction, because it's pain. It's a deep pain. Like there's something missing. I know there's more than this. You know, and it can become so. It's the journey. It starts our journey, and it can take all kinds of convoluted forms as well. That hunger. It can lead to crime and corruption, and it can lead to, you know, violence and, you know, terrible acts, because that person is trying to fill that hole and they don't know how. And so, you know, in a way, what helps with that gene key, because I want to go straight to its city, which is boundlessness, because there's always such a connection between the two, the boundlessness and the hunger. Between I look at it sometimes as, you know, the shadow is the seed, and then the flower is the gift is the flower, and the fruit is the city. And of course the fruit also contains the seed. So the seed, and so the highest state and the lowest state, I'm using that, doesn't really make sense, high and low, but they contain each other, you know. So that hunger, you know, it's the hunger for our eternal, to know our eternal nature, which is boundless. It has no boundaries. It has no, you know, no limits. It's off the map. It's, you know, the quantum universe. It's beyond the mind's capacity to understand.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you come from that space, and then you begin to like look at your life, and you go, well, here we are scrunched into these little bodies in this little timeline, you know, of 80 years or so, maybe. And we're going to live in this little pocket of time in this part of history. And it's like, that's a kind of, if you begin to like expand that a little bit, and you begin to see, well, actually, you know, part of the eternal being is to kind of have, you know, is to dive in and out of form, is to constantly be reborn, you know, is to constantly move in and out of forms in a way that has a continuity. You know, so I'm talking about like reincarnation or rebirth, and this kind of longer timeline that our soul has been on for eons, you know. And if you begin to look at life from that perspective, you begin to realize, you know, you those bounds begin to get wider, and you can see that the hunger is driving the whole way, all the journeys. The hunger is, like the Buddhists say, the hunger is what brings you back into the form. You know, so you leave the form, you know, into samsara, and you come back round into the wheel again, because the hunger drives you back.
Yeah.
and it keeps driving you back. But each time you come a little bit more, you polish the mirror a little bit more of your and you learn something, and you begin to kind of approach the source again, and that's what adventure is in the middle. The gift of adventure. Adventure is like, wow, everything's adventure. Even suffering is an adventure seen from that point of view.
Yeah.
It's pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
But wow, every time you kind of, it's like, the ancient Indians call these leelas. A leela it means play. It means God's play, a leela. And it's like what the divine does is it gives you an envelope. It says, okay, your time for another play now. And you open the envelope, and in there is a leela, is a play. And it's like, it's got a beginning and a middle and an end. It might last a day. It might last 4 years. It might and it's like, it's going to take you on a journey, and that journey is probably going to have suffering, and it's going to have hopefully some breakthrough and hopefully some resolution. And then it's done. And then the divine gives you another envelope with a leela in it. And this is the adventure. It's like,
I thought you were done.
It doesn't stop, And so that's the 35th gene key. And I would say one more thing about it, because it's an odd one, and because it's an odd one out. And there are other ways of looking at the gene keys in what are called codon rings, which is another pattern of them. And in that way of looking at them, it sits on its own inside our DNA as it's an island. So it's very unique. It's weird. It's a wormhole. And it's one of the miracle cities. It's one of the miracle places in human DNA. It's like, when a programmer makes a program, online or something, the programmer always leaves a back door, a place where they can get into the matrix, no matter what. It's their code in the back, and that's what the 35th gene key is. It's a backdoor way. It's a wormhole in the matrix of creation. So that's why it's boundlessness, because it's like it can break all the limits and paradigms that we have. It can create the miraculous. And so every now and again, the 35th city manifests in a human being or a group of human beings in the world. And something extraordinary happens, something that no one can understand, something. And I call it the gene key of flight, the city of flight, because it is about being boundless, and humans have always dreamed of flying, and we all have flying dreams, all of us, and it's actually a phenomenon that, if you understand about dreams, it's dreamed. We've had dreams where we lift off the ground and we're in flight.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually that's what I'd say is that's actually the memory of this city. Because that's not just a dream. That's something that we can remember in our DNA, because we can fly.
Wow.
Now, don't anyone go jumping off buildings. But
please.
In our very, very, very distant past, that may be something that we could do, and in our future, that will be something that we can do, because the whole nature of DNA is not at all what scientists tell us. It contains secrets, and secrets within secrets within secrets. And its biggest secret is that DNA is a code whose ultimate purpose is to transcend itself.
Wow.
Right? And that means that it will actually expand beyond itself into the cosmic universe, which is where DNA really lives. So it can, everything is like, in my exalted states, when I had the transmission receive the gene keys, I saw that, I saw these patterns embedded in human beings, like these crystalline patterns inside me, inside my bones, inside every cell. And then I saw them just ongoing. They were in the air, they were in the walls, they were in the ground, they were in the stars, and it was just pattern within pattern within pattern. And I thought, wow, this pattern never ends. It doesn't end at the end of my body. And we know this from quantum physics that now as well, we've kind of proved it.
Yeah.
But so the body has the capacity itself, you know, and for that soul to then break out of the bounds and experience and bend time and space, and then be able to bend anything. You know, it can do anything. So it's why it can create miracles. It can do whatever it wants to do. So it might go, yeah, I think we'll go for a fly today, and take off in the physical body. And there are reports of these things, you know, there's loads. If you do the research, you see, you know, in history books and in story, particularly from like old civilizations like India and China and even South America, there are stories of people flying.
Wow.
And that's just one example. That 35, it's a sort of symbol, because it's the ultimate, it's like, it's the symbol of Superman or Superwoman. You know, it's like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could fly? And we've always wanted to fly and be like birds.
Yeah.
So it's the symbol, it's the iconic symbol of the 35th thing, the 35th city, is that we could fly.
Wow.
And we can.
Well, I can't wait till we catch up to that.
Yeah. And it's actually, I would say it's our destiny as a species to experience that at some point in the future, because the DNA itself it has to mutate. It has to constantly change and mutate, and that's what it's built to do.
Well, that brings me to another question. So I want to move to the let's see, the 41st CD or the 41st gene key is actually works like a start codon. So can you tell us a little bit, like, to me, this means that like we can rewrite our history, that we can like hit a reset button, like that we can change. But the shadow for that is fantasy, and the gift is anticipation, and the city is emanation. But I know, like when I read through it, you're talking about this start codon, and is that related to this? How is that related to our evolution, and how can we hit that reset? You know, how can we that start codon? Like, I'm thinking right now might be a good time. You know.
Yeah. Well, actually, in 2027, when I think it's there's a major planetary alignment. I think it's Pluto moves into the 41st gene key. I think that's correct. Oh no. Yeah, I think that might be correct. And anyway, there's a major event involving the 41 in 2027 in the time ahead, and it was a significant date given by Ra Uru, the founder of human design, which I didn't mention earlier, by the way, and it would be nice. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I pay homage to that system as well, because I learned a lot through that system and from Ra, its founder. So yes, well done. And thank you to them. Yeah, the 41 it has a particular story in it, which is it's about the very beginnings of things and beginning things anew, as you said, and the very fact that it's kind of fantasy, which is like the dream of something ahead of us that isn't, that, you know, and then anticipation is the gift, which is like the feeling that something's about to happen and I'm on the edge of it, you know. And then the city is emanation, is when you found the place where it begins, the source. So it is a source code gene key in itself, and it's a bit like 35 in a sense. They're similar because they both are the only two gene keys in all 64 that kind of sit on their own as islands, you know, in the genetic code, which is why you know, they say that the one where the 35 was the ancient start code in some previous form of humanity. That's like a scientific thing that and so the 41 relates to what's called the initiator codon in genetics. So what that means is that every sentence in our genes, because it's all spelled out in sentences and formulas, begins with this code, with this one code. And it's how scientists can decipher where codes begin and end, because whenever they see this little encodement, they go, oh, that's a start code. So that's telling us that we can start reading from there, and then program in there. And then there's also stop codes as well. You go, oh, so it's it's beautifully written, our DNA. It's really it's like a book. It's incredible. But there are infinite combinations of this language, and that's what's so amazing. And so the one about fantasy is that it's, fantasy is a lovely thing, and there's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing wrong with any of the shadows either. And we don't want to get into the way of thinking that the shadows are like something we're trying to avoid.
Don't avoid them, please.
They're a part of our humanity. They're a part of our immaturity. And so the difference between fantasy and emanation is that the fantasy kind of dreams of it but doesn't do anything, and that's wonderful, to dream of things, because it's where it begins. But you also have to do something, so if you dream it strongly enough, then it starts to then be encoded into your body. And so you have to, in a way, you have to not get caught by the fantasies. You can enjoy them, but otherwise you get caught in this loop of the shadow that just gets caught in its own loop, and it never gets out. And so you have to kind of actually act on it in some way and have the courage to step out and go, well, how about making some steps towards those dreams, instead of just dreaming in my mind. And then, because there are many people that live their life like that, they dream of being something, or having £1 million or whatever, dollars or whatever, and they dream of this and that, but they never do anything about it. And because they don't believe they can, or that it's about their own self-belief, that I'm a victim in some way. And it doesn't require they know how to get there, but it's about making the steps, like the first small step towards like the fulfillment of your dreams. It can be a tiny thing. So and then of course the other thing about that 41 is that it tells us that we won't find the dreams outside. That's another thing we learn, because emanation drives us back inside. We actually have to go inside and find where the dream started. So as we mature as beings, as spiritual beings, or as we evolve, eventually that hunger that we were talking about earlier drives you back inside. You realize, I'm never going to fulfill it outside. I'm never going to fulfill it. I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried sex, I've tried drugs, I've tried food, I've tried traveling, I've tried, yoga, I've tried everything, and nothing has done it. So and then comes a turning point when you turn within. You go, I'm going to look inside for the source of the hunger. And that's following the emanation of the hunger back to its source. And the moment you get back to the source of any of these shadows, then you reach the place of birth, the source of us, the source of our being. And then you kind of, a detonation takes place, or an enlightenment, or because you've gone back to the source of where everything stems from. So it's an inner journey. So eventually we all have to go inside.
I really relate to that, and for my own path. And I've talked a little bit about my son and some of these. I certainly had my own suffering in my life, and like everyone, but it was really as a mother that I have a son that has a profound. He's very intelligent. He's amazing being, and I hate that I always focus on his his neurological disorder, but it's profound, and witnessing him, like, as his mother, where like there were times that I just felt so helpless, like I just was like, all I can do is just watch him suffer. And it was, and it's been years, year after year after year, and there were times that it was so he has these tics that, like, they take over his body, and like he's had to live where he doesn't even feel like he has any control over his physical body, and he's explained it to me that he feels like, he says, Mom, I have too much energy, like it doesn't fit in my body. That's how he's described it. And you know, just watching him to where he sometimes couldn't even sleep at night because he would be having these, you know, these tics. And it started to drive me back in because I, you know, I had been on my own path already, and you know, I had discovered the gene keys, or found them already. And then, you know, as we were going through this, they started to come back into my life, and you know, it really did open me up again. And I believe one of the things, you know, I don't remember which gene key it was, but it was talking about taking this leap, and like that is the work. And you know, I had this vision, and you know, witnessing my son, he started to represent humanity to me, and I just, you know, and I went in and opened up, and it was like how you described it, that it, you know, it wasn't something, just this creation right now, and putting this show out at this time, like it is truly me stepping out and being willing uh, to say a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't have been willing to say publicly before, or just willing to show up in a public way. And also it was because I connected in with source, and um, you know, I truly connected. I put a boundary. I said, I only want to receive from source because I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't have any power here. I don't know what to do. And that was when I really started to receive, you know, messages from the cosmic mother, from the great cosmic mother. Like she started to talk to me. And, you know, and as I, you know, and then as I, you know, have been through the gene keys again, there was like, again, another layer, because, you know, the 22nd gene key was talking all about the cosmic mother, and all about, you know, how we have this access to source, and how it can take us back, uh, you know, back into right relationship, really is how I feel, with communing with the planet, and with communing in our families, and just the willingness to not push away our shadows anymore, and to, you know, and I love when you say that the shadow, like, please don't, you know, there's a lot of like, I don't want to be in this energy, or dump negative people, or dump, you know, and it's like, really, I think that can be part of the shadow as well. And
Yeah.
the last key I wanted to bring in real quick is the 47th, because I feel like the state of humanity, the shadow is oppression. And so that I really feel is a whole humanity. And then the gift is transmutation, and the city is transfiguration. And I hope, I don't know. I mean, I'm human, but I feel that we're at this point that there could be a great shift. And you talk about this great epic, and that you talk about this time in the gene keys, and I feel like there's this energy coming in, that there is a great shift that's happening, and I would just love for you to be able to speak into that.
Thank you. I just want to ask you, how old is your son?
He's 17 now. Yeah.
Is he? And what's his name?
His name is Caden.
Okay. Yeah. It's nice to kind of hear a little bit about him. And because it's, you know, I guess we're each given, like the 47th shadow is oppression. And what it shows us is that we're each given those envelopes, you know, and some of them last a lifetime. And it's got this challenge inside it, and that's our lifetime. So what, you know, what looks like oppression and difficulty and heaviness, and you know, particularly when it's the suffering of someone we love, that's the hardest kind of suffering. Actually, it's much harder than our own suffering. You know, when we really love someone and we see them suffer, that's the steepest learning curve there is, I think. And so that's an amazing journey for your soul and for your heart, you know, and his heart as well. And like for you to learn to love, you know, love him through the suffering, to be there, to even, you know, because we that part of us wants the suffering to stop, right? Of course, it's so human. you know, for us to love completely unconditionally, we have to also contain the suffering. You know, so we also have to love that as part of him as well, and part of his journey that at some deep level his soul has chosen, and your soul has chosen to be there beside him, and all the others that love him, you know, have chosen there to be beside him, or be inspired by him, or be touched by him. And you know, and when you look at someone like that and they look like they have a heaviness over them, you know, they often actually create incredible waves of light and opening in people who get to love them, you know, or see them, you know. And so there's always that, you know, I guess everyone that's watching this, I want them to know, to kind of have that reflection wherever the heaviness is in your life. That's where the most light also is, you know, where the difficulty is. And that's why oppression contains transmutation. That's its purpose. Its purpose is to change us. So when someone we absolutely love dies unexpectedly, you know, and we have suddenly to deal with that grief itself is a journey that will change us. And if we give ourselves to it 100%, it will open us. It will soften us, actually. You know, eventually it will open us up. It will make us a fuller human, a more compassionate human. All of these things, that's what they do. That's why the city of that one is transfiguration, because it completely changes who you were. You know, you're no longer the same person. You know, when you really, but you have, you know, you have to enter into such a deep surrender. And those are the deepest lessons, you know. So that's a gene key that that saints come in with, you know, because literally it's true that very advanced souls would choose those keys in their life in order to go through something really challenging and testing, where they have to let go of their wish for another person. I mean, it's not that you ever let go of your wish for them to not suffer, but you have to let go of your attachment.
Oh yeah,
You know, because that just causes everyone more misery, because you're like cling, you know. And then when you really surrender to it, you realize, I don't know if you have had those experiences. I'd love to know.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I also see it, you know, I work on a locked psychiatric unit, and
oh wow, so you've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. I've seen, you know, it's very interesting. And you know, the way I see people is, I feel like it's a unique way of seeing people. You know, but when I'm working on a locked psychiatric unit, I've said that, you know, there are times where I can't tell who's an attorney and who's a homeless heroin addict or a homeless methamphetamine addict. And, you know, once they've showered and, you know, you start like, I mean, sometimes you can, I don't want to say that, you know, but it's like, you know, people are all on a journey. And, you know, if I showed up at work every day and wanted to fix my patient's suffering, then, you know, I don't think I would want to keep going back. And, you know, it's not my job. But when it became my son, you know, there was definitely, there's definitely a path for parents who have sick children, and there's a path. And, you know, and it usually starts with trying to fix and trying
of course it does.
fix, heal. And eventually it leads to, definitely a deep surrendering and just
love,
acceptance.
Love, unconditional love,
all of it. Yes, absolutely. And I'm excited for his path. You know, he's very intelligent. He actually wants to be an ethnobotanist and a chemist. And so I feel like I just birthed a little shaman, and I have no idea what the world, you know, next for him. But we were on a path where we were about to consider neurosurgery, and so there it's been an intense path for sure. You know, right now we're not sure, but we're keeping all options open. All options.
Those are like kind of the hardest decisions, of course, to make. But it's such a treading a line of like.
And it's not my decision to make either for
him. well, he has to make it, but you have to be there with him, you know,
Yeah.
for him to make that. But sometimes if you were younger, you would have to make the decision. So
Sure.
for all, you know, parents or anyone in those kind of very difficult situations, and, you know, we all have our leelas, you know, and they're like exams, you know, for the soul.
I hope I pass.
And
I don't want to do it again.
yeah, no, I know, I totally understand. I know, who wants to do their exams again? I know,
Really
it's,
don't.
well, I really take my hat off to you, Miranda. I didn't know that about you, so it's really, I really honor you for, you know.
Well, thank you for letting me share it with you. I mean, I sometimes bring in little snippets, and once in a while it comes in a little more, but
Yeah.
you know, it really, this work, and, you know, and just visiting it, because you talk about a lot about contemplation, and, you know, there's a lot of different, like, we have people coming on here teaching breath work or teaching, you know, these different things. This is a different kind of work. Like, it really is. I really truly do believe that it is a map to our awakening, and, you know, even a map to understanding our surrendering, or understanding the mirror of our suffering. And it's given me the ability to see the gift. It really has.
I
So
mean,
I really appreciate that.
in a way, the gene keys, because you know, I can't encompass it in an interview, but if you come and if anyone's interested, you come and look at the website and look at and listen to some of my YouTube videos and things, and start to get a feel for it.
Yeah.
But because what it is, it's an introduction to the living wisdom that lies inside you, you know, inside each of us. And so in that sense, it doesn't have a kind of set way. It's like you know, there are these codes, there are these pathways through the codes. You know, the technique at the core is the art of contemplation, which I don't know if we have time to, I can
And then
mention.
there's says, well, I do want to bring in that, because I did want
Yeah.
to bring up the Venus sequence. That's your
Yeah. Well, I'll mention that in a sec.
yeah.
But and so there's all these different ways, but ultimately, it's each of us that unlocks the wisdom inside us, and that's what's most important. It's not about kind of healing a person. It's about helping them see and unlock the wisdom that's inside you already, you know, and the love, you know, because that's part of the wisdom. And love is like where I'm at now, but I'm always there, but because I think, you know, you mentioned Venus sequence, and if people go onto genekeys.com, if you're interested, you can go and look at your profile, and there's a journey. That profile is a complete journey, you know, it's a life journey. It's not just you know, it's not like an astrology chart where you get someone to come and read it for you. This is the journey you have to unlock. You have to do it yourself. If you're interested in doing it, you come and do it yourself, right? Because the insights that come from you interacting with your profile will be of immeasurable kind of benefit. You can have someone talk you through it, and that's fine, that's great at the beginning, but ultimately then you're going to have to go and do the mining yourself to find the insights, because there are layers and layers to it. But and there's a program I've written over the last, I don't know, 5 years called the Golden Path program. It's an online program that guides you step by step into that profile. I'm sure you know about this, Miranda. And it's a very rich program. You do it at your own pace, in your own way, and it takes you on these, you know, if you go the whole way, it takes you on 3 journeys. The first one is purpose, that's part 1. The second one is relationships, that's part 2, love. And the third one is prosperity. And they're all interrelated, and they actually come in that order. So unless you really know your deep purpose inside your being and your body, you can't really be strong in a relationship. You know, that's why that one comes first. So the first thing you have to do is get grounded in who you are and what you are, and kind of anchor in some of these higher frequency energies of your profile. And then you can be in a relationship in a healthy way. if you don't have that, then you have two people in a relationship, and you've basically got two shadow patterns in a relationship, right? And we all know what that's like. You know,
Of course.
but so if you can kind of get anchored in that purpose, then when you enter into a relationship, then you can have a really clear relationship and a really fruitful relationship. And that's when relationship becomes a spiritual path in its own right, because relationships still, you know, even at a kind of high level of self-awareness, they're still incredibly challenging.
Yes.
You know, especially if you stay in them.
Yeah, I've been married for 20 years.
Yeah, okay, me too.
Challenge.
So you know they're incredibly challenging, because you kind of think you've got somewhere, and then you round another corner and another whole set of things come up, and it's like, oh, that pattern again. And they're deeply entrenched, and so we have to find levels of love inside us that we didn't even know we had, and forgiveness and tolerance and, you know, graciousness and all those gifts. And so that part is called the Venus sequence. And it's a whole understanding that comes through a series of gene keys that are imprinted through your birth, and that relate to your childhood defense and wounding patterns. And if you understand those in the right sequence, then you can open them. And it's like having, it's just like having a kind of, you know, like a safe. Like if you imagine your heart as a safe, it's like having the code to the safe.
Well, that sounds
you know?
like the thing I
So
want.
you're like, I click, 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 gene key 29, line 4. You're like, oh, wow, that opens the first lock. And then you click, click, click back that way. That opens the second lock, gene key 19, line 4 or whatever, 2. That opens the set. So the way you contemplate is you contemplate those codes. And as you go into them in a sequence, that was the sequence that they were encoded in you as you grew up as a child. And so we travel the sequence in reverse as though we're going backwards. So we unlock the teenage one first, then we unlock the one that was in puberty, then we unlock the one that was deep in our first 7 years, then we unlock the birth one, the core wound. And they open in that sequence. And as they open, the layers and the petals of our heart, or our heart chakra, begin to open as well. And so it's an incredible journey, the Venus sequence. It's not for the kind of, you know, it's not for everyone, because it's like tender. But if you're ready for that level of a journey, I'm about to do a big virtual retreat starting November, and it's 6 months long.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Because you need that amount of time.
Is this the one that we have? Because I know we have a 10%.
Yeah, I'm getting all you guys, if you're interested. Those of you who are the bold ones, you know, yeah, it's 10% off, you know, but yeah, it's a big thing. It's like it, and if you haven't done part 1, you can do it, but you'd have to gauge your own readiness. So you might want to find out a bit more about gene keys and stuff before you decide, because it's a big thing. I mean, there'll be, you know, probably a few thousand of us doing it all around the world. Because there's a lot of people been waiting for it, and it's a big, it's a journey into love. It's a, you know, it's a journey into love. And we've been running these virtual retreats. Have you done any of them, Miranda?
I was invited in one in like 2012.
Okay, ages ago, first, yeah.
And then
so we've refined them a lot since then. And they're an incredible journey. So if anyone's interested, like, it goes on in the background of your life. So whatever else you're doing, it doesn't interfere with your life, your job, or your, you know, commitments. But you shape your journey around your life, but it has weekly, monthly themes that unravel. And there's a small commitment and time that you need, you know, to put in, to read some things, to watch some videos, and then you contemplate, and then you can connect with others around the world if you want to, which are really strongly encouraged around those themes in kind of community calls that we have. And you meet some incredible people who are having incredible experiences similar to you, usually. lenses, and they're life-changing journeys, because we use the online world. The problem with with doing retreats is that you go away, you have amazing experience on a retreat, and then you have to somehow integrate that high into your life. The beauty of a virtual retreat is it's integrating it from the very first moment. So it's integrated. It's all about your life. It's about what you're doing today and tomorrow and the next day. And this week we're looking at this.
So it's relevant.
This month we're looking at attraction, who you attract, how you attract, why you've attracted certain people into your life. And then when you're focusing on that month, you can guarantee you'll see it all around you. You'll be like, shit, I really, I understand that my frequency band is set. It must be set to some shadow thing, because I keep drawing that shadow into my life, that pattern. So I must be putting it out. And so it's like there are layers of revelation that come to us in one of these things. And so I can't speak highly enough about them. And I got an amazing team around me who are really professional, and hosts who kind of,
you have ambassadors around the world.
Yeah, I got it. We've got it down, and it's a really caring environment that we create so that people can have big, authentic experiences, heart-opening experiences, and also can learn to take care of ourselves and our wounds, whatever they are, and talk about them. If we're ready to begin to talk about them. With each other.
I want to hear more.
So anyway, if anyone's interested, go to genekeys.com, look at the Venus retreat, and that's the deep end. If you want to jump in the deep end,
I love to jump.
If you want the shallow end,
I'm all about it.
So if you're a kind of crazy person, or you're ready for that, then
I'll
come.
jump right into the deep end.
I'll be there, and we'll It's an incredible journey. Yeah, it really is. I should say, you get put in a village, right? So you get put in an online village with about 100 other people. It's random. So those people, you travel the whole time, those 6 months with those people. And so you have forum that's yours. You have there's a kind of 24-hour kind of virtual cafe that you can drop in and out of and just chat to anyone who happens to be there, day or night, and meet people that way. There's there's a lot of really great features. But if you're like if that's all a bit over the top, then that's my little book on contemplation. The Art of Contemplation. It's on Amazon, and it's under 100 pages, and it's jargon free, and it's a great little start to the Gene Keys, because it doesn't have the commitment of this great, huge, thick, heavy one. But,
it's not like you have to sit down and read this in one
no.
I mean, it's not that kind of a book.
No. But also you could so I would really recommend this book for people, anyone. I've distilled all the wisdom down into this book, actually. So it's a great, I'm really pleased with it, actually.
And your writing is so beautiful to read, Richard, because you are a poet. Like, it really comes out in your writings, and
thank you.
Like, there's so it's such a joy just to sit down and even just read a few pages, or because it really does get you in that contemplative state, which for a long time I feel like wasn't really valued. And I feel like people who naturally come in that way, who are contemplators, that's what sounds so wonderful about joining your Venus sequence that you're guiding people on, is because you would be with other people who are those kind of natural contemplators.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll be especially looking at your relationships, and really kind of opening to what we started with when we mentioned the 22nd Gene Key, learning the art of graciousness. So I would expect it to have really beneficial impact on your relationships.
Sounds good to me. I think I'm going to be joining. Well, I want to
Anything else I should say? I mean, I have a,
go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say, if anyone's interested, I've got a kind of a really active YouTube channel as well with lots of little talks and 10-minute kind of things on a variety of subjects.
Is it just under Richard Rudd or is it under Gene Keys?
Yeah, it's under Gene Key's YouTube channel. Yeah, it's great, and it's a nice channel. Lots of free things on there, and you can just dip and dive and like. I think it's nice to just, yeah.
Yeah, you have like, and even on your Gene Keys website, I mean, there's so much like for people to just go navigate. Just go check it out. Definitely go on the genekeys.com website. Definitely check out the Gene Keys YouTube channel. You know, Richard you have so many free resources too. And, you know, and there's definitely, you know, a lot of the courses that you have are, you know, they're very affordable for people, and they can kind of do, you don't have to do it all at once, you know, it like it really is a journey. And that's really, I really do, you know, I appreciate that, because sometimes people come in for a visit and then they do something else and they come back in, and, you know, that's been my experience of it. But definitely go to your profile too on genekeys.com. And, you know, you even have like audio things that people can listen to on there. I mean, it is, there's a lot to look at and a lot to learn. And I feel like a lot of people will find value in that, learning more about yourself, learning more about your journey, and the sacred mirror of your suffering, of the suffering of humanity, and to be able to find the gift and eventually the CD. And I really, really, really appreciate you coming on today, Richard. It's been such an honor to interview you and have this conversation with you. And I look forward to more people knowing about your work. And I'm excited about this Venus journey. And what did you call it again specifically?
It's it's the deep dive into love. It's the Venus virtual retreat.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it'll be on the front page of our website now, and we're starting to advertise it because it starts November the 2nd.
Okay, perfect.
So we're kind of putting it out this month, and I'll be putting out lots of things around it this month, lots of little kind of marketing bites, so that like, this is what's going to happen, this is what we're going to look at, you know. So I'll be like doing some teasers and some trailers and of what's to come. Yeah, really nice meditations in it.
Meditations,
things, you know. It's a journey. Yeah, it's a long time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Richard.
Well, thank you, Miranda. It's a real pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well.